and to welcome Luca Gual, who's going to be leading this transitional study group and has set up the schedule that you see for the fall. We use study groups, different centers use them in different ways. We use them to present material in an organized fashion that's not available in the classroom yet. And so for a couple of years we had a study group in human trafficking, and we're quite happy to have converted that then into a course that's offered now as a full semester course. We hope in the very near future there'll be a course in transitional justice, because we think it's a very important dimension both of human rights and peacemaking and development. So we're very honored to have someone who's a very senior diplomat be our fellow in transitional justice, Luca Gual, and I'm going to turn the program over to him and welcome him and all of you.
Well, thanks a lot, Charlie, David Olson, for all of you. Yes, we are very sorry for changing the venue, because we felt we wanted to bring it near to you here so that most of you will be able to. Maybe what I will do before introducing Omer, just to give you an overview about the transitional justice in a wider context in terms of the training and challenges. Yes, I want to put in the context, the transitional justice, but within the larger scale of conflicts in the world. And I think as you can see from this picture, is conflict per se, but hidden within the conflicts are issues of great human rights abuses. Leave alone the deaths, the level of the deaths, but the trauma, the abuses are quite immense. And this could give you a picture about the challenge you are seeing for the transitional justice. But even if we look to the other aspects of conflict, you could clearly see we are in a world that is not that nice, a very worrying world. And it's becoming of a great importance, because what is happening, if you look at what is happening in Syria today, everybody is becoming, even our global commitment, and the global values seem to be actually diminishing now, because everybody is becoming scared. This conflict complicated. We don't want to get ourselves into it. Iraq is becoming an issue. But in the process of what is happening is that it's not only the human suffering, but still we are going to see a lot of issues to do with the legacy of the past. Syria is a good example. Maybe Omer will talk about it. But I think I want you to reflect even the debate today in U.S., a clear debate of a leadership with a global commitment, but a population very concerned. And you could see clearly what is happening, the decision by the cabinet in Britain, surprising the very Labour Party that actually supported the invasion of Iraq. These are very concerned today, together with the Conservative agreeing that not to do such intervention. And you could see clearly even the global values seem to be changing. And this picture, I think we need to project it. What are we going to see into the future? Are we going to see the same or increasing level of conflict and tension in the world? Or are we going to see everybody is going to their territory and then leave this global commitment, and then we focus to our own country? And see the voices I'm hearing here in this country, very powerful, very powerful. Enough is enough. We don't want to engage again. This exceptionalism of US seem to be maybe one of the past. It's not. Even I could see President Obama talking about it. So this is the picture really we need to look at it and see it closely. These are the index of the Global Peace Index. But I want to play for you this one. I don't know how can I do it. Just to give you the reading of the Global Peace Index. I think it's just only about...
You have this.
Is it a video?
No, it's a video, yeah.
Do you have to click on the link?
Let's see.
Okay.
Yeah, on the link.
Oh, yes, you can. Okay.
Yeah. What is this one?
Yeah. If you can increase the...
You can hold it with this corridor.
The world has become less peaceful this year. Levels of global peace have fallen by 5% since 2008. And the nature of global conflict is shifting. The 2013 Global Peace Index shows that while there's been a decline in hostility between states, the number and intensity of internal conflicts is increasing. In a period characterized by violent hangovers from the Arab Spring, deterioration in Afghanistan and Pakistan, civil war in Syria, escalation of the drug war in Central America, and violent anti-austerity protests across Europe, the trend towards violence was experienced by 110 nations over the past 6 years. Afghanistan, Somalia, Syria, Iraq, and Sudan put the table in the 2013 index. But the lack of peace doesn't just affect areas in conflict. It impacts everyone, as it takes a heavy toll on the global economy. The Global Peace Index shows that in 2012, violence cost $9.46 trillion US. That's 11% of gross world product, almost double the world's agricultural production, and 75 times more than the official development assistance provided to countries in need last year. Despite the overall decline in global peace, many nations have shown resilience to the recent violent trend. Iceland, Denmark, and New Zealand are regular features at the top of the table, with small and stable developments dominating the top 10 most peaceful countries. Interestingly, recoveries from national grievances in Chad, Haiti, and Georgia have seen large increases in peace scores for all three countries. This is not only a direct result of decreased levels of civil unrest, it is also a concerted effort to improve the structures and institutions that move societies away from violence towards peace. The data shows that peace is not just about the absence of violence. It is about the lasting development of society and the well-being of citizens. The results for the 2013 GPI signal a need for a greater focus on peace as a prerequisite for growth and prosperity. If we choose to make peace our measuring stick for success, we can apply the resources necessary to attain it.
So just will give you an overview about the let me see, I'm not sure now where to get out. Yeah. No.
Can you press escape? Can you go to the PowerPoint?
PowerPoint down here. Yeah. Yeah. So, but I want to stress the point about the picture which I show, the 2008 and 2013, a very clear increase. We are becoming less peaceful, but it's a very powerful indication where the world is heading to. But it has a lot of implication to the transition justice, which I will tell. But it's very important to highlight some few points. The hostilities seem to be decreasing between states, but increasing, the internal conflict seem to be increasing. And this is where you have a lot of enormous human rights abuses. And it's very alarming. But even when you look to the cost of violence, I think it is very important. It's not the cost that has been estimated to be 9.46 trillion, but you have a hidden cost that has not been counted for. But let me give you, so this is the perspective of the transition justice. This is where the dilemma we are facing. Legacy of the past, these human rights abuses, and then you move to the transition. In the transition, you have competing priorities. In most cases, the issue of dealing with the legacy of the past is not a priority. I personally experienced this in Sudan. So even in most cases, when you talk about the state building and nation building, the issue of nation building seems to be left to non-state actors. And it's not a priority at all. I was surprised in the report of the World Bank, 2011, of the World Bank report on conflict, security, and development. This is the first time they stressed the importance of transitional justice. They say these are actually the only entry points so that you avoid reversing back again to the violence and you can break the cycle of violence. I think these are very important that we... So I just want to put in the perspective the transitional justice. Now, clearly what we want to achieve, what to enrich our understanding and discussion with this study group, this is the culture of impunity. It's a huge challenge. And also how best you can establish an effective rule of law in the context of the democratic governance. But basically these are the things that we are trying we are struggling with to address the transitional justice. The issue of the persecution, the whole of genocide, crimes against humanity and war crimes. Omer will be talking today about it. But it's not about because there's a lot of debate about these tribunals. ICC is a clear example, or hybrid courts. And I think even if you looked at it in the context of Africa, it's a clear debate now of whether that is a good path or not. So people start shying away. I attended the 50th anniversary of the African Union. I was shocked the way the leaders start talking about ICC as if it is something alien, something targeting them, and it's not becoming an African issue, the issues of human rights. And look, Kenya today is a debate of how people are regressing. Because being a member, you want to regress or to come out from the ICC in order to appeal to the leaders. So it's a huge debate about the whole lot of ICC and the hybrid courts. Truth seeking, reparation is a very good example. Canada with the indigenous families, and then Australia with Aborigines. But even the current incidents of Mau Mau and the U.S. government, the U.K. government, is a clear example. You're going back to the history, digging those feelings, so that you need to settle them. There are some countries that assume as if they are settled, but they are not settled. These are hidden tensions that you need to address them as early as possible. And truth-seeking is a very good example. That's why I want to put the issue of South Africa, whether it is exceptional or a pattern, because it's a good example that we may need to look into it critically. And then institutional reform, especially when you talk about the issue of the security sector reform and DDR. And I think especially DDR is a big sector. In most cases, the way it is handled is very discouraging.
What's DDR?
Pardon?
What's DDR?
Decommissioning.
Disarmament, demobilization, disarmament, and reintegration. Yeah. So this is how we would like to organize our study group. First, preventing genocide and responsibility to protect. I think Omer will be talking today about it. And I think this is a starting point. Before we talk about the legacy of the past, let us talk about the past before it becomes, the present not become a past. And then the whole lot of trauma and reconciliation. I think we have arranged, somebody did a lot of work on the trauma, and a place called Abyei. Yes, it's an area between the two countries. But it's a reflection of the real issue of trauma and how it shortened the side of the people coming out of conflict to look positive to themselves, because we don't address these issues of trauma. The genocide itself, I think reminding ourselves always about it, what is it, and how did you do it? I think Rwanda is a good example, and it's actually capturing most of these issues. And then the supply side of the transition justice, who is actually providing it. And somebody will be talking about the informal legal system in Southern Sudan, and the way of the formal legal system and informal legal system, and who is really could be able to supply the transition justice in this context. Documenting human rights, I think it's a big issue. Asa will be talking with us, and possibly Omer. We have a Sentinel side project also about it. And then we reflect back on the South Africa truth-seeking and reconciliation experience. And by the end of the day, we want to see what are the lessons learned to the newest country, that is South Sudan. So I will try to see whether we can summarize with some of my colleagues. So this is how we would like really to engage in this study group. And maybe before I give Omer a chance, it would be good if you can introduce ourselves briefly so that we know ourselves. My name is Luka Byongdeng. I'm a fellow here at Carr-Ryan Center.
I'm Charlie Clements. I'm the executive director here.
I'm Mulia Lubis from Indonesia. I'm also a fellow at the Harvard Kennedy School.
Ifako Carol, MCMPA, HQS, Nigeria.
Okay.
I'm Sarah Beckert, alumna of Harvard Divinity School, and I work for Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, which is a human rights organization.
I'm Hannah Winnick. I'm a first year MPP.
I'm Michael Kleiman. I'm also a first year MPP.
Muhammad Ahmed, Muhammad Isa. I'm mid-career fellow, Mason fellow.
Alana Timison, I'm a postdoc at the University of Chicago.
I'm David King. I'm on the faculty at the Kennedy School.
I would just like to emphasize David King is the faculty sponsor of this study group and the transitional justice work we do here.
Yeah, that's true.
Thank you, David.
Julia Gundy, I'm a mid-career at the Kennedy School.
Mona, mid-career Kennedy School.
I'm Misha Carpus, research assistant here.
Anne McDonald, mid-career,
Jamie Lam, I'm a medical student at BU.
I'm Sarah Blair, I'm an undergraduate at BU.
Sabine Choi, Mid-Korea Kennedy School. Sahol, Singapore, Mid-Korea as well.
Akolawet, South Sudan, second year MPA.
Katie Balvac, MPP at Kennedy.
Ann Connell, NPP1.
Lauren Fitzgerald, MPP.
Jessie Landerman, I'm also NPP1.
Fatima Mitsuru, program assistant, Center.
Sean Chow, Mid-Korea. Mukundi, Omer's friend.
Omer is
We call him the chief.
the chief, huh?
Melina Sanchez, mid-career at Elmer's friend. Emily Sherwood, mid-career.
Stotler, first year.
Madison Marquez, mid-career.
Damsel Cortez, Mid-Korea. Sarah Piker, Pavel's coordinator here at Carr-Ryan Center.
Mid-career.
Oh, mine is Lao, I'm Mid-Korea.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Day Lewis, also mid-career.
Hi, Kyrie, Mid-Korea as well.
Hi, I'm Mirza, I'm also Mid-Korea.
I'm a designer, I'm a disability scholar, and I'm president of the Leadership and Human Rights Human Rights Defenders.
Okay.
So let me suggest, we have a few people out in the hall, and I bet if we squeeze in a
excuse me.
chair there and a chair at this corner, and squeeze in a little bit, we can bring everybody inside.
We
can bring more people in.
And we will try to get a larger classroom, it's
You
hard to
finish
get
with this.
classrooms at this hour.
No
We'll
more.
see if we can do that.
Yeah, I will.
I can be here.
Yeah.
More friends can come.
I think we got another seat or two in here.
Yeah. We can move a couple of stairs.
Bring them on the chair.
Yeah.
Okay, we got
That would have been exciting. It made me talk for 2 more hours. You see, people are coming and already
So we got room for 2 more up here?
and like 3 more here.
We can push his chair.
Yes.
Come here.
Yeah, move over. And then, yeah. Sorry guys, we have to like, after we settle.
Okay.
You
I
have an
believe.
empty chair over here at the table?
Anyhow, again, thank you very much for coming, and I hope we'll be able to be up to your expectation. But indeed, it is your engagement in this study group that will make it more meaningful. So I'm delighted also Omer managed to be in contact, I think, most of this crowd because of Omer. So I will not exert any effort to introduce him to you. But for the sake of it, to be clear, that Omer is a friend of mine. We studied together in Khartoum University at a very early stage. And we were doing a lot of things by him, Darfur from the south. And we saw through a lot of things until the country got divided. But yet, still these relations are there, and quite strong even. But indeed, we are so happy even meeting together here in Harvard Kennedy School. Thanks to all of you, especially to Charlie and then to David. And maybe we would like to see what could we share with you with our humble experience. And Omer is somebody, he did a lot of activism and working with ENAF and Darfur and also was a fellow here at a certain point. So I think you know him, but you will know him even better as time goes. So I will allow him to talk about the issue of the preventing genocide and responsibility to protect. Very big issues. I know he will try to navigate in such a way to give you a substance in a sense that you can trigger a discussion. But indeed, it is from you where we can get a lot of feedback also. So, Omer, you're most welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Luca, and thank you, Charlie. This is a long relationship. Thank you for a long time, and we've worked through different things in the past. David, it's always a pleasure to see you coming back to Harvard Kennedy School. This is where I started about 7 years ago in this institution, and working with people like Ambassador Samantha Power, who is now at the UN representing the US, and many others. Professor Jacqueline Baba is here, and many others who were in this institution. Sarah Sewell. It's great to be back and to see some of the familiar faces of my class of the MPA 14 at the Kennedy School. Thank you so much for coming and making this place, the way it is, with your experience, with the diversity that you brought in, with all the wonderful insights that you are teaching us every day from all corners of the earth. I believe we are now 68 countries represented in our class. It's fascinating. And all the others who are, cross-registered and coming from other places, you're welcome. Like Luca was saying, the issue is huge. I don't even know where to start. And please, I know that among you, there are people who are more knowledgeable, more specialized than I am on these issues. So if you feel that I said something that is not correct, or stop me. In Harvard, it is amazing the collective wisdom and disciplines and the things that many people know. So for somebody like me, we put on a spot. I humbly concede that I know very little about this, but being an instigator that I am, I'm going to start the debate. So let us go. This is a long paper that I wrote about the responsibility to protect, and I think the title was the international recognized right to life trumps state sovereignty. You can see where I'm going here. The case of Darfur, and it was for a conference on R2P, or the responsibility to protect, last spring in April in the University of Ljubljana, and now we are taking part of that together with other supporting information from other places. But let me start by paying tribute to some of the people who started this a long time ago. I think R2P itself, or the responsibility to protect, is a global South initiative. I think, I might be mistaken, but I found the DNA of it in the early writings of people like Professor Francis Deng. He was in the Brookings Institute. I believe the book that was written, if I'm not mistaken, is called Sovereignty as Responsibility. He edited that book together with Professor Zortman and others, and this is, I believe, is published by Brookings in 1996. At that time, it was the challenge to sovereignty of the state, and that is where kind of like I'm going back to that origin of. We are not going to go there and challenge the sovereignty of a state and saying, since, and David, correct me if I'm wrong, since the Treaty of Westphalia, I think it is 1648? What was that? Yes. Yes, the Treaty of Westphalia. No, so it's 1648. Yeah? 1648. 1648. Yes. So from that time when the states started to become, states, with these political boundaries that are there. And also, I believe it is the Conference of Berlin, 1885, where basically the colonized states were becoming like kind of a pie that was divided between the European powers at the time. Since that time, the state sovereignty had been in constant check. But people are not coming out and saying, we are challenging the sovereignty of state just for the fun of it. No. The challenge for the sovereignty of state came because of certain conditions. One of these conditions was clearly articulated by people like Francis Deng, and he invited other people, also from the global south. Ambassador Mohammed Sahnoun of Algeria, a renowned diplomat and a scholar, and he, together with Gareth Evans, when the Canadians, who is my friend Joliet, when the but Gareth Evans, of course, Australian, but the Canadian government was the one that invited them, and Mohammed Sahnoun and Gareth Evans together worked. I worked with Gareth Evans when I was finding my way in these things. He was the larger than life, of course, being the foreign minister and prime minister of Australia, and the president of ICG, and I was working for my boss John Prendergast, and working with him by proxy as advisor to the ICG project. And later in life, we met in several places, most notably in about 4 or 5 years ago in The Hague, and we together contributed to the drafting of War Crimes Convention. That is maybe 50 years from today, humanity is going to adopt that. But that is another issue, talk for another day. But people like Gareth Evans and those guys articulated why the sovereignty of a state should be challenged. And I will read you something. I'm not good at that, and even my handwriting is not that good, but they said in this book, Francis Deng was saying, among others, because he's the editor, I kind of like, and also, Sudanese, so I find myself biased to him, but he's the editor of the book. In conflict management, political stability, economic growth, and social welfare are functions of governance. And there is no doubt there. Then the responsibility for failing these policies are therefore squarely on the states. These humanitarian consequences must rest with the government that is concerned, or the government's concerned. And he said, although accountability for such responsibility rests with the people of that country, but when people are oppressed, and I might add to this code also, not only that people are oppressed, but in the case of Sudan, the government of that said country becomes the main instigator of violence. In other words, this is the government that designed the project of instability within the state because of other political issues. But when this happens, and the people of a place like this become oppressed, either by their government or by other powers, then their power to hold their government accountable becomes very limited or non-existent. So who then is going to come in and to help these people out? So that is when I was asked about this, the first thing that came to my mind was what happened in Darfur, and using that to challenge the powers of the international community or dare them to intervene. The first thing that came to my mind was big loss of life. Big loss of life in the sense that, the right for life of the people had been stripped from them. And somebody might come to me and ask me the question, and I will concede in advance that I don't have the answer. What is the threshold? What do you mean by huge loss of life? For somebody, 5 people is huge loss of life. For somebody else, 500 people. For another, 500,000. How are we going to quantify that? This is something that I will let you grapple with, bearing Syria in mind. I'm sure these questions are going to come over and over again. In Rwanda, 800,000 people were killed in 100 days. In Darfur, with the best estimate of the United Nations, 300,000 people. And because that is just the violence between 2003 and 2005, because it continued, and now we are going back to levels of violence that are resembling that time. We don't know until today, because genocide continues in Darfur today. And genocide also does not just have the characteristic of killing people. Genocide becomes something else. It morphs into containing people in displaced camps, not allowing them to venture out of this place for years and years and years. And the genocide takes so many shapes and forms, and we can talk about that later. So with this question in mind, how much and how many and what is the threshold? I let you try to answer this question, and many people outside of this place. But like many of these people say, let us take Lee Feinstein, explained that the adoption of R2P marked the end of 350 years period, during which sovereignty was defined as or by the inviolability of borders and the monopoly of force within a state's own border. This is the definition of Lee Feinstein. And it held for all these years until there came a time where today people around the world are asking their leaders this question. And this is also something we take from Syria and many other examples, where the followers, in the words of Professor Barbara Kellerman, the followers are now demanding their leadership to answer these questions. In other words, the followers are becoming the leaders. They are exchanging their places. And they are the people who are setting the agenda for the next millennia, in terms of dealing with human rights and dealing with international relations and dealing with a great human catastrophes. We've seen India, for example, intervening in Pakistan. We have seen ECOWAS troops acted first and then asked for the security of or to secure a UN Security Council resolution in the case of Liberia. We've seen the intervention that took place in Rwanda, albeit late, and whether that is the intervention of the United Nations that ended or the intervention of the Rwandese themselves. They are Rwandese among us. At one point or the other, we are going to talk to them, and they will be here in the seat talking about this. And so hold your questions until that happens. So as a consequence, the concept of humanitarian intervention began to be understood in a more clear practice than it was before. Yes, there were countries that took upon themselves to intervene, albeit because of the regional proximity to conflicts and the fear of a spillover, or they have their own ulterior motives of intervening in this place. But as a norm, as a concept, it began to be understood in the world, and the people are debating this and saying, not only the people that fear the spillover, because the international peace and security is a global demand. So let us, put some parameters. Let us make this part of the international law or international practice. So, in light of the debate around the contours of sovereignty, and in the face of state tolerance of a perpetration of atrocity crimes, the Canadians and others asked for this, and then we've seen the conference that we talked about around 2001, I think, when that first report came out. And that first report, when it came out, it talked about the large scale of loss of life. And that is what I wanted to go back to, because we will see later on, after the World Conference on R2P, that this has been diluted, it's watered down. And people brought in more excuses not to intervene, and we've seen the political expediency that led to no action or limited action in some parts of the world. That is not satisfactory to people like us who are demanding the intervention of the international community at large to save life. So they were talking about maybe larger scale loss of life, ethnic cleansing. That is going to trigger some sort of a threshold that will lead to intervention. And the focus of these people in the beginning, Garth Evans, Muhammad Sahnoun, and the others were on larger scale loss of life. Maybe he was informed by what happened in Rwanda at the time, because Darfur was yet to come. Darfur happened or began to hit the international arena around 2003. This is 2001 when we were talking. But when Darfur happened and the challenge took place, and General Colin Powell made the determination that what happened in Darfur was genocide, then the world was like, okay, then what do we do? Even though in the same breath he said, what happened in genocide, what happened in Darfur is genocide, and I quote, he said, and I was there watching this happening in real time, he said, it might even be happening right now or occurring in our time, something to that effect. But then in the same breath he said, that does not mean that the United States is going to intervene. In other words, saying, we are not going to do something about it. So this is an amazing moment in the history of mankind to me, that we see after these years, when we came from the time that Raphael Lemkin was walking around and trying to convince everybody and knocking doors and defining the genocide, and the world agreed with him, and the Genocide Convention came out and saying, if you are targeting any group of people in whole or in part, and you are doing A, B, C, which Mr. Powell looked at and together with his team determined that this is what happened, then the world, sitting back away from what they agreed to in the Genocide Convention and saying, well, we might not be able to do something. I think, I will try to go fast forward a little bit to the World Summit outcome and the document that they came out with in 2005, which defined basically 4 other things. They kept the ethnic cleansing there. They took out the loss of life. And they basically said there are genocide, war crimes, ethnic cleansing, and crimes against humanity. And so an organization like mine, the Enough Project, was founded on this premise that we are going to, hopefully, I don't know if it is going to happen in my lifetime, but we hope, hopefully, ending genocide, war crimes, and mass atrocities. That is the premise on which we found our organization, and that is where we work, and that is, in my mind, where humanity should aspire. It might not happen in one generation or in the lifetime of all of us, but that is where we should go to end that. We took out of the equation the large loss of life because, like I said, people like easy things. Keep it simple and stupid. There's people who know what the KISS metaphor is about. That they want something that they can work with. Well, too much loss of life is a little bit, ambiguous and is and cannot be defined. So we ended up basically with the international community coming to agree that there are 3 pillars to the responsibility to protect. That is the state responsibility, and the capacity building, and other early preventative steps, and the intervention and other coercive measures when it is needed. The definition of all this, and the debate still continues, and on what that means. And the bigger question becomes even more complicated is, who is that responsible body that is going to intervene? Is it your neighbors? Is it the United Nations? Is it an amalgam of this? Is it people working outside the frameworks of the known regional or international organizations? Is it the coalition of the willing? Is it the people that are just out of the goodness of their hearts that are going to come together and say, oh, gee, these guys are going through this dilemma. Let us go there, put some boots on the ground, get these people protected, and get the hell out of here. And how is that going to happen? How we are going to sustain that? How we are going to fund that? How we are going to convince people that this is essential? And if we challenge normally, like in the case of Sudan, when the government of the day or the government of the country becomes the perpetrator itself, then you come in and say, we need the permission, or at least the cooperation of this government to do something. So if we are going to challenge this government, are they going to permit us to do this? And if we don't need their permission, how are we going to come about this? What is the legitimacy? Where are we going to draw the legality from the international norms, from international law? How are we going to do this? This is a question that a lot of people are still grappling with, and I hope that we are going collectively to look into answers and to try to find out. If we cannot find all the clear-cut answers, and I bet that is going to be the case, at least we are going to ask more questions that inform this. So the last thing that I will talk about is going to be a little bit anecdotal, taking me back to the very definition of sovereignty itself. One smart Arab philosopher, Ibn Khaldun, Al-Muqaddimah, if anybody read this, huge philosophical text about what are countries, how they are going to be run, how are they going to be, how are they defined, and there is much more. But I'm taking from that something profound that Ibn Khaldun talked about, and that is why we belong to a certain place. What does it mean to have a government of one place? And in his attempt to answer, he said, and I will say it in Arabic first, and then I will attempt a translation. Salah amr al-nas, amar al-bildan wa salah amr al-nas. That is the building of whatever that cities or countries, and then tending to the affairs of people. So if it is not that, if it is not building this place that you call your country, and caring for it and for its citizens, then what the sovereignty is for? So that is a question that should be out there in our minds all the time when we are looking at, yes, norms, values, beliefs, practices, good practices or bad, governments. When we are looking at these rigid definitions, there is always something inside us as human beings that transcends all these other forms that we are looking at, or in the case of governments, hiding behind. And that is what trigger all this thing about intervention, because governments that do what the government of Sudan has done are always going to hide behind that sovereignty. And that is where the challenge is coming from. So we ask them this question: why are you a government? And what is sovereignty for you, and where you are drawing your legitimacy from? I think if we are looking at these things and trying to answer these questions, then the intervention, and by the way, I hope that I will not be read wrong, that I will always advocate coercive measures of intervention. That is not what I'm talking about. But interventions that are going to keep a lot of people from dying. Not necessarily, because as we have seen from the slides that Luca had shown, for those of you who were here, and I advise you, those who were not here, to go back to Luca. You can give them the link to look at the index of peace. That something profound was said here, that the peace does not mean absence of war. Peace never means absence of war. It is the welfare of the people, and it is the stability in peacetime. That is what peace is. The sustainability of that time of tranquility, where there is no war and where there is no violence. And that is what makes people invest in the welfare of their people. That is what peace means. But so many times, mistakenly, and we are now here talking about transitional justice, people say, oh, there was conflict in place X, or there is conflict between countries X and Y, and just because there is no war, then there is peace. Wrong. So the stability of that peace, the continuity of it, the sustainability of it, which lead to the welfare of the people within that said country or within the warring countries, or that is what peace is about. And that is the reason that in the absence of this, combined with all the other things that we talked about, from loss of life and ethnic cleansing and genocide and mass atrocities and all this, that is going to trigger intervention. I'll stop here, and I hope that we all work together, no matter what we are doing, to end atrocities, because coming from a place where I witnessed this firsthand, and working in environments in places like Somalia and Ethiopia during that time, and here Bertikan with us, the leader of opposition in Ethiopia, proud to have in our class, and also to be with us here. One day she is going to be in this chair talking about this as part of this series. So we're looking forward to hearing you. So being in situations like this and seeing this firsthand and seeing the immense human suffering that is coming out of this, a human suffering beyond anything that you can describe at all in your life, no matter what words in any language that you've known or any language that is known to man, that you are going to describe this, you will not be able to. And if you are given hundreds of thousands of years to live, these indelible marks of this kind of violence, they are going to be with you in your life, in your psyche, in your lens by which you are going to see the world. That is why all of us collectively, I think, if we make a goal of us, no matter what we do, that we end atrocities in the world is going to be a better place, not just for us, for the generations to come, and that is where we want to take this place and to leave it when we exit better than when we entered. Thank you very much.
I would just like to add something to your eloquent remarks. I took a break from international human rights between 1992 and 2000. I was working in New Mexico and Texas with communities that didn't have running water or sewer. So I missed the Francis Deng book that you talked about. Somehow that escaped my attention. But I think the history books will record that the responsibility to protect, not only in the theory of writing about it, but in the actions of the African Union in the early 2000s, when the United Nations was afraid to send peacekeeping troops to many places in Africa. And the African Union and ECOWAS said, it is our responsibility to intervene in the affairs of another state when they fail to protect their citizens. And I think that's clearly stated in a number of statements of the African Union, and it's certainly reflected in their actions as well. So I think history will show that the South did lead us into the responsibility to protect, which is, a barely emerging norm. It may take many decades, maybe most of our lives, but hopefully it will become a norm of
absolutely, and that happened, if I may recall, around 2001. Yeah. And the book, actually it was a series of discussions that took place in Brookings Institution, and many of us passed by in some of these highly intellectual debates about this, and then the book by Professor Deng came around 1996, putting out the framework for the norm that became in practice the intervention of ECOWAS in around 2000.
David, any intervention for
before the answer?
Yeah?
Just a quick correction. Yeah.
Right.
The intervention of ECOWAS was before 2001, 1995, 96. It started in Liberia, even before the UN came to Sierra Leone in 1997.
Yeah.
UN support came in.
Okay. I stand corrected.
David,
no. And Saleh from.
But let us. I think, Omer, thank you very much. I think you have really set the stage in terms of the context and the issues that are coming out very clearly. Leave alone the genesis of the right, responsibility to protect. But indeed, you put forward issues to do with the issues of the definition itself and the threshold. And the test is why not people are implementing the commitment, the global commitment, and what are the difficulties facing us with these commitments. Why are we intervening in some countries and not in other countries? What happened when you intervene, and what are we seeing today? Look at Libya, look at Egypt, and I think I could see an intervention. Why did it not happen in Sudan? Why is so much debate today about Syria? It is shifting to an issue of the tool used to kill human beings rather than human being killed. So this is shifting of the focus. So, but even the debate today here is about chemical weapons. It's not It's not about how many people actually died and how much atrocity committed. I just listened to the French when they were trying to assess after the Russia came with this initiative. This is somebody mentioned it specifically. We want those who actually committed those atrocities to be brought to the books. So it's a complicated issue. That's why I think you put the issues before us. But really the debate today is what are we seeing? How can we enrich this process of debate that can make a meaningful impact on the human lives? And that's why we want to discuss these issues together with you. So there are few people who came very late. If you can introduce yourself, and if you can register also, then you can introduce yourself.
Okay. My name is Deng Majuk Chol from South Sudan, first year MPA here at Kennedy School.
Good.
Yeah, I'm Gada, registered. I'm from Sudan.
Okay.
Career also.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
We have one outside.
Outside also.
Both HQS mid-career program out in South Sudan, Juba, prior to coming to the Kennedy School program.
Good.
Dorothy Tuma, the Kennedy School, neighbor of South Sudan to the south.
Wow. You do
Chris.
Okay.
Chris, Kennedy School, run an NGO to South Sudan as well.
Okay. Any reflection, intervention, questions, enlightenment? Yeah. Oh yeah. Yes, and then you come.
I have a lot of questions, but I'll limit it to just one for now, since it's a full room. So you
To say your name again so we can...
Alana Timison,
Okay.
from the University of Chicago. So in addition to the issue of the threshold of killing, which is not a new problem, because this was a problem with the Genocide Convention as well, using the language of in whole or in part, which is also extremely vague and somewhat unhelpful. But it also seems to be that the international community doesn't just grapple with the threshold question, but the intentions of the killing and who specifically is being targeted, which is why states go to such great efforts to call who they're targeting rebels or terrorists or anyone that's trying to overthrow the regime. We saw that in Rwanda, we see that in Sudan, we see that in Syria as well. So I'm wondering if you see that as being equally problematic, because the international community seems to respond much more quickly and more emotionally when people are being killed for who they are, regardless of the number or the threshold of killing, as opposed to just sheer numbers. Because responding to sheer numbers has not been effective in very many situations at all, Rwanda being the most obvious example of that.
Couple of questions from the room.
Yeah, my
Echo?
yes, my question to you both, and again, Omer, we were in class yesterday, and Professor Burns quoted an address that was made by President Kennedy at American University, and I think she said that she quoted the president as saying that there is something that is more than national interest, that is human interest. So my question really is whether we accept the idea of responsibility to protect, which is a big progress, or whether we try to invoke Genocide Convention if the nation states are bogged down by only protecting the national interest. Could anything be done, even if we accept those doctrines?
Yeah, I must admit a lot of ignorance. I've heard about the genocide, a lot of ignorance about the causes and the history. So the question I'm asking is, because you repeated it quite a number of times, that behind all this is your conviction that government is a perpetrator. Could you just explain that and what's driving that?
Okay. I think it was 3 questions. Yeah? And Elena, I think what we said is important. However, the part of intention, and I'm not the person who will talk about the technicality of it from a legal standpoint, but is kind of like limited to the definition of genocide. So when we're talking about mass atrocities, that comes in passing. But genocide is a crime that has been defined by international law, and it has a certain thing tied to it. That is the intention part. But with mass atrocities, with crimes against humanity, with maybe that is not a legal point where lawyers can sit down and split hairs. But in the case of genocide, because it's such the demand for intervention, then it becomes by law, according to the convention. However, countries like the United States, they can say we will not intervene. That is their prerogative, of course. That is why the limitation of that comes from, because it's such a horrid crime. And it happened in the history of mankind several times, but we kind of know, apart from the people who were talking about the genocide that took place in the new found land, like the Native Americans and others. But in the known times, we kind of like go back as far as the Turkish-Armenian conflict that is defined by Armenia as genocide and Turkey, and that is before even the definition of Raphael Lemkin, but based on it from the memorandums and the letters written by Ambassador Morgenthau and others. So that is where it can, and then we look at what happened in Germany during the Nazi, and then what happened during the reign of Pol Pot in Cambodia, and so on and so forth. So it became that particular crime. If we look at mass atrocities, and that is why I'm going to the threshold of the basic demand of the right to life, because it goes to the heart of the human rights, and that is the basic one. That is, in fact, that is the foundation of the God-given rights, if you believe in that, of the rights that are given to human being, your right to life, because without it, all other rights, become redundant and unnecessary. So with a call, and yes, President Kennedy, and one of the great speeches in life is the one that he gave in American University, and talking about the human interest rather than the interests of sovereign countries. And I think if we look, we don't have to look at R2P versus genocide. We don't have to create that dichotomy. But we can, and we don't even have to cherry pick and to say, oh, this is because of this we need to apply R2P, or because of this we need to go to the Genocide Convention. We can say this is a situation that demands a human intervention. After that, we leave to all others. As long as we agree that a set part of the world in need of protection, in need of intervention to preserve life, then we can go back and define these things. It is not the other way around, because I'm afraid also the same way that you are, that we are going to say, in this case, this is a precedent, we split it. We make it a legal issue while people are dying. Let us first agree that this needs an intervention, and then how that intervention is going to come. And for Afoki, I think my conviction is in the case of the government. It's not in any case else. My conviction that the government is the perpetrator, that is limited to what happened in Darfur and in Sudan as such, from the beginning of the war in the south in August of 1955, even before Sudan became known, January 1st of 1956, as the Republic of Sudan that we know today. So, and it is not the creation of this government, by the way. It's in successive governments, we have seen that the war in the south, the insurgency that grew out of the feeling of marginalization and injustice in South Sudan, spread by time to the rest of the country. And because we had a government, the government of the day that has been there for almost 25 years today, which turned that, instead of a contention between a government and its citizens on the benefits or lack thereof that are extended to the citizens, into a holy war that is defined to the extent that it changed the doctrine, the fighting doctrine of the army itself, to become an army of a country that is fighting infidels that are the citizens of the same country. So that is why my convictions are coming from there, that the government of Sudan is the main perpetrator of the violence. Not to say that there was no violence before this government, or there are not other violences that happened as a result, maybe triggered by this. But if you are looking at the main reason and the main perpetrator that led to the violence, that in many records, talking about over 1 million people in Sudan that were killed or affected by this, that the main perpetrator in that is the government of Sudan. And how that was treated by the international community is still, the jury is still out there on this. Some people say they sent troops to Sudan. The United Nations is there. Some other people are talking about it is not effective. It did not end the violence. And I subscribe to the latter group because I have seen, and part of what I have done here with these people before in this very place, in the Carr-Ryan Center for Human Rights Policy, is the documentation of atrocities of what happened in Darfur. And now we expanded it to become the documentation of atrocities in the entire Sudan, because the Nuba Mountains are coming along and Blue Nile, besides what happened and led eventually to the secession of South Sudan.
It might be fair to add as well that I think Darfur actually revealed the emptiness of the Genocide Convention, because I truly believe that Secretary of State Colin Powell and perhaps George Bush believed, when they sent teams to Sudan to investigate what was happening in Darfur and concluded it fit all the definitions of the Genocide Convention and named it genocide, that the world would rise up. That somehow the Security Council of the United Nations, the European Union, that our conscience would not permit genocide to continue once it was named. And I think the European Union said, you named it, you do something about it. And the U.S. didn't have sufficient interest to do that. So I think it was a revealing moment of what you said about who's going to respond, although R2P didn't exist at that time. But I think that there was the belief that if something was named genocide, that the convention obligated, because it does obligate any nation to respond to that. It's not an individual responsibility, it's a collective responsibility, and there was no response.
Maybe in addition to this, let me look at the other aspect of in conflict, you have also the insurgents, and especially the insurgents are also can contribute greatly to the issue of human rights abuses. Let me take the example of Sudan civil war. The rebel movement that was engaged, and this is one of the things, it is very important engaging with the rebels up front, because the issue of rebels are not abided by the international obligations. So what happened in the case of Sudan, with the humanitarian intervention, people engaging them with what is called the basic rules, and actually committing the rebels to abide to the international laws. And I think this is one of the very innovative way to make the insurgents also to become part of the international norms, even while they're fighting. And I think it is sometimes we tend to wait for them until the peace agreement is signed. But even in the process, I think it is critical that you should engage them, because also there are a lot of atrocities committed. And in most cases, even in the context of the South, the South Sudan, actually people kill themselves among the South-South rather than between North-South. And I think one of the good things of the humanitarian intervention under the Operation Lifeline Sudan was engaging with the rebels as a responsible people, that they are responsible to protect their own citizens. And this is one dimension that sometimes we need, and it is good the point that you have raised. Coming to the other aspect that I am seeing is just the issue of Syria and this nation, because this is a country that has been seen by many as championing the global values. But I start listening now how this one is shrinking. And you could see clearly to what level this nation can be taking the cost of international global responsibility. A time will come when the leaders becoming so detached from the people, and the people they want some basic things about themselves, about their own country. And becoming a problem, who is going really to uphold to these global commitment and global values? Because the world is becoming so scaring, and it is understandable to what level the people of the United States will be able to sacrifice consistently. And sometimes even the people who are actually behind taking the share. I was so surprised when I saw Russia becoming now with this idea of the breakout in terms of how to treat with Syria is quite amazing. And even the president here becoming so weak, trying to commit to the global commitment, which is actually is not the feeling of the people. So I'm reading even the right, the responsibility to protect. Without this global commitment, I think we are not going to see. I think people are becoming more scared about what is happening in the globe. Our world is really, we are in danger. So that's one of the, please welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much. Sorry I missed the first part of the session, and I always like to discuss with Omer these issues because as much as I am Sudanese and all that, but sometimes the politics side of it is a little foreign to me. I just wanted to comment on something that Omer has said about that successive governments actually have marginalized people probably in the West or the South, etc. So, because when we were talking, when I came in, the attention and the focus was basically on the current government. And we all know that, the Sudan had lost the international community basically during this government, like 25 years ago, even when we were still having a civil war with the South, unfortunately. So it's only when this government had come to take power and all that. So if now we want to start shifting the attention to other governments since independence of the Sudan, so are we here saying that it's not the current government, but it's rather the people of the Sudan who had ruled ever since independence? Because Omer would, and the colleagues from Sudan would agree with me that probably there is an issue of governance that we have always had, and the marginalization has not been only negatively affecting the people of in the southern region or in the west region. And so probably there is another context probably that I didn't hear from Omar, that marginalization is not only in the West, but rather everywhere, rather than probably the capital or the central part of the country. And it's also a little striking that the world only looked at the Sudan when it was there were stories about, okay, there is a marginalization because of race, of ethnicity, or religion, or color, but not when there are other atrocities or marginalization happening against other people, in the north, far north, or in the east, probably. So, and talking of successive governments and the last government, I mean, it's a little also strange that the Sudan was a very close ally to the U.S. before this government came to power, even when we were having a civil war, a very bad civil war, like longest civil war in Africa, basically. So these are my points.
Yeah, please, two of you there. Yeah, we'll take more.
Thank you for your presentation. Thank you that you always do everything soulfully, friend. I have so many questions, but I think mainly I would be interested in hearing what your framework would be for an ideal intervention in a in a situation where there's global consensus that genocide has occurred. Where should the intervention come from? What international body? And how would it ideally be arranged? And then kind of in conjunction with that, what should the international community's ongoing business relationships look like with countries that are in the process of hurting their own people? And I'm mainly thinking about Burma that I'm working with more, but should we, in looking at how the U.S. has started to open up our trade with that country in the midst of the fact that there's still
they are opening, but they're still openly persecuting and waging war against some of their own people.
Talk to me.
Thanks, Omer.
Your favorite sentence.
Thanks, Omer, and the Carr Center for hosting. Omer has ignited a very useful conversation. Two things come to mind. One is that Iraq and Libya, in my view, defined how we engage in this particular subject, but also I think how we engage in human rights. I say this because the abuse of the principle of responsibility to protect in Libya significantly altered the landscape and perhaps how in the future we will intervene anywhere. I see this especially coming from the Africa group. I work with the African Union, so some of these politics do so once we engage. And you can see the African countries in terms of how they've also been responding to the Syria question. And it's really telling, especially given Omar's illustration that Africa was at least at the forefront of pushing for the R2P principle. In fact, it's already codified in the Constitutive Act of the AU, Article 4. What that has done, and I think in my view, and when one reads Momubani Kishore from the books about the failure of the international global governance, is to ask this question. Since the world almost looks like George Orwell's Animal Farm, all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. What then needs to be done in terms of futuristically looking at how we address these particular principles? And it leads to the ICC debate. It also leads to how futuristically one can intervene in Syria or anywhere else for that matter. I think for me, some of the arguments that I'm really wanting to hear is what needs to be done in terms of global institutional reforms. But beyond global institutional reforms, can R2P still coexist in the manner in which the original framers had thought it within the global governance architecture as it exists?
We have some seats inside. If you'd like to come inside, we have about three seats.
Both of you are talking about global commitment. Global commitment to responsibility to protect. Yeah. I've been doing a lot of human rights cases in my country, being a lawyer myself. And I investigated human rights violations in East Timor. And I know there are still, killings of Papuans in West Irian, in Indonesia at the moment. And I'm quite skeptical. He was talking about global commitment in this regard. I don't know how to do it because we have been, asking for that, for a long, long time. And I'm not sure whether, you can probably expect, like Human Rights Council, UN Human Rights Council, to do more, proactive, roles in this kind of intervention. Because with the ICG, because I've been a member of ICG with Karen Evans when we talked about this human rights intervention, we also were quite depressed, with all this negative response.
You can hear this. Omar, you take all of them, and then you can come back to Muhammad.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Omer, for this wonderful presentation. My question is just about the intention, whether in Sudan, what happened in Sudan, was it a genocide or any other thing which was according to classification of human war crimes or ethnic cleansing or whatever. But to me, as a person coming from Darfur, and I've been there, and I've been facing the genocide, and I devoted my life for that because I thought this is a moment I have to work. And I work for saving the people. And I document this case. But treatment was my basic focus. But the documentation is the other tool for the future. But still, I will talk in wide range about the medical documentation about this. But the other point is that the Sudan government, there is a real intention on annihilating the people of Darfur for one reason. Now there is, the documentation is showing that only the African tribes were targeted. Second, and everybody can go and read this, which is published, and the title is the medical document, human rights violation among non-Arabic speaking people, civilians in Darfur, across the study. And I think there is now the perpetrators, the leaders of the perpetrators, Arab tribe, are now confessing. And the president himself now is acknowledging that. Third, the intentional eviction of the humanitarian organization in a very wide scale. At the time where the president was indicted, then the same day, 13 the best international humanitarian organizations were evicted from their country, and even some of the national organizations who had been conducting a nice work in Darfur were targeted, and I am now here because of that. But the third part of that is the confession of the perpetrator himself. So I think these are quite convincing that there was an intention to destroy that ethnic group. And that is still going on. My question is, seeing this malaise of international community, where are we going? Is it the time that, and the examples are so many, whether starting from Congo, going to Central Africa, going to Sudan, going to to Syria, going to many other places. There is a complete international malaise. Nobody wants to intervene, nobody wants to protect. Yes, the humanitarian side is taking care, but that is not enough. They are just feeding people and treating, but they are not protecting the people. So the question is, where are we going in this chaotic world?
Good question.
My first question relates to what has been raised earlier as to who should uphold this commitment. And I agree with you that ultimately what we want to address here are the loss of lives. If there are crimes against humanity happening, we precisely want to protect these people. That's the whole concept of R2P. But I just want to know your view about the possibility of humanitarian intervention when the intention behind, not of the people domestically who are involved, but the intention of an institution or an organization or a country providing military action, the needed military action to protect the people, is beyond simply protecting the people. Yes, they will protect, but we know real politics is at play here, and that there will be other intentions beyond that. Would that how would that weigh in within the context of the urgency of protecting the people, whether in Sudan or in other places? And if I may be allowed a second quick question. You mentioned earlier about the pillars enunciated in the R2P document of 2005, and one of the pillars there is are interventions beyond short of military action that may be necessary even before you reach a massive scale of human rights violations. And I think that's one important field where we have to have a stronger global commitment on. We don't have to wait for the atrocities to reach a level of genocide. More preventive intervention. So I'd like to hear more about your take on that and how the global community can be mobilized better to address that.
Thank you, Damsi.
You, and then you.
Just two very, very quick questions. One of them is just with regard to the ICC. Obviously there have been a lot of allegations against the ICC that its work is very politically motivated. There's been retaliation for ICC indictments. Suggests to me that either they're doing something right or they're doing something wrong, or some combination of the two. I'm interested for your perspective on whether or not they've actually got a useful role, particularly perhaps in terms of the evolution of the definition of genocide, and also in terms of acceptance of the norm internationally. And also with regard to UN Security Council restructuring and revitalization, do you see this issue of genocide and looking for more effective decision-making bodies, do you see this as perhaps something that should be influencing discussions?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
This is a very hot chair here.
Omer has sometimes very much. I think he's been a very insightful and very educative. I'll start from the issue raised by the previous speaker and what the raised by the related to international global governance and the legitimacy to intervene. Specifically in the case of South Sudan, we've seen there is a clear division between decisions taken by the Security Council and then the position of the African Union in handling this. And again, that's a major source of conflict and makes it very difficult to even address the problem. Whilst there is an indictment on the leadership of that country, and the African Union sees it very differently. Again, this needs a better understanding from the global perspective because sometime last year there were debates in Africa where questions were asked, is the continent on trial? I mean, this is based on whether the continent has confidence on the responsibilities of the ICC, whether or it's targeting African leaders. I think this needs further debates and further deliberations. Then again, to address that, it involves a lot of things. Then I'll take you specifically to the strategies you presented earlier. I mean, I came from a post-conflict country, and I'll refer you, whatever information you are doing, also refer to us. We serve as a model of a post-conflict country that is progressing very well.
Okay.
We've had 3 successful peaceful elections, and we're the fastest growing economy in Africa today. So you can reference some of the documents. So specifically to the strategies, the one relating to the role of the international community, I think we also don't have to wait until when the guns are silenced before you start working on the ground. I think there needs to be a lot of work on the ground. And one being, how do we ensure inclusion? In the institutional reforms I saw there, the focus was on the judicial sector, but it's also important on local governance. How do you ensure participation? How do you ensure accountability, transparency, and equitable access and distribution of resources at the local level internally? We have to think around that. When we talk about the GDR, from our experience again, if you are demobilizing ex-combatants, it's important we don't follow short-term fix. More often than not, we are forced by international community to accept short-term fix. Short-term training, 3 months, 4 months. What happens is, these guys become dogs of war. They become mercenaries. If even they don't fight in a country, they move across borders. Because the only thing they know now is, the AK-47 becomes their credit card. You can use it to access any other thing. That's critical. Then finally, there is a debate again in the continent, ensuring transitional justice, whether you use the legal system, that is the ICC, or use a Truth and Reconciliation Committee in South Africa.
Or a hybrid.
Yes, yes. In our own case, it was unique. We had both. And both the international court was there, and we have the TRC, both of them were present. And again, the causes of conflict varies from one country to another. It depends on thorough contextual analysis. For our context, it was appropriate to have both. So it's also important in looking at the South Sudan context to see whether both methods could be just one.
Thank you, Sal Alpha. I think these questions are all legitimate, complicated, long, and they need a series of talks, not just one like this. Hopefully, Dr. Ghada, I can give you a capsule of an answer that I know it's not going to satisfy you or any of you actually, but we have to get out of here in time. Yeah, I'm not losing focus about the government of Sudan and being the main perpetrator, but I think it is our problems in our country are so meshed and so complicated and so deeply rooted that it is not one government. This government can take the responsibility for genocide and what happened in this past 25 years that it was in power. Being the longest government and the government that is today, it takes a lot of responsibility in what happened. But when I, in answering I talked about this is not the only government, that is just showing that there are so many structural issues in Sudan that needs to be addressed in terms of violence, and not just this government. That is number one. Number two, this is the only government that is indicted in terms of the people, from the level of president on the way down, in crimes like genocide. However, the marginalization, and you are right, it is not just on the people of Darfur, but it is easy for somebody, and this is what we have seen before in the war in the South. A lot of people have the luxury of sitting away and saying, oh, the war in the South because, oh, what happens in the South is happening in the other parts of the... But when you see that these are the people that are killed, these are the indiscriminate bombing that is happening, the villages that are, destroyed, the women that are raped, the systematic destruction of the way of living, then you really know there is a difference between marginalized people and marginalized people. Yes, they were all marginalized, but because somebody said I'm marginalized, that is what they get. And because somebody else somewhere said I'm marginalized, but he didn't poke the government, then they don't get that treatment. So I think it is unfair to say that the rest of Sudan is not marginalized, only these people. By the same token, it is unfair to say that marginalization is blanket and the treatment of that marginalization is all the same. So, and we can leave it at that point, and we will continue this debate. The ideal, I wish I know, Anne. I wish I know the ideal. I wish that I have a magic one that I would say. So that is why we want all of us, and I know you being there in the annals of power, Anna and I are very good friends, even though we came from different, she's a Republican. No, but we moved together, and she was in the White House. She's, the chief of staff of Lady Bush at the time that George W. was in the White House, and on her
You were
own.
knocking on the door.
The thing is, she was in, she went out. I never got the chance to go in. No. But I think you've seen from your days in the White House the agonizing process of how to get this, to intervene here or not to intervene there or what have you. I think we need to strike a balance between what we can do, and that is going back to your issue themselves, and I hope I can piggyback your answer here. What we have done, I'm also an analyst on a project, it's kind of like, Charlie knows about this more because we started it back again here in Harvard, in a humanitarian initiative, which is called, and also Dr. Muhammad was part of it, was called the SSP, the Satellite Sentinel Project. And then after a year cooperating with Harvard now, we grew in different directions. We took ours back to Washington. And that is the interpretation of digital images from satellites on battlefields and different aspects of looking at posture of troops and using that as a deterrent factor to stop people from going into conflict. And I think to a good degree that is working today. Because when you tell people, genocidaires and people who perpetrate mass atrocities, they want to do that in the dark. They want to do it behind scenes. That is why expelling humanitarian agencies so that they don't report, giving all kinds of obstacles to reporters and journalists and people who are going to document this, and so on and so forth, intimidating witnesses. So many, the litany of things that they can do goes long and long and long, because They don't want people to see. But when you come and to say, guess what? I can see. And this is what I have seen. Not only that you see and you react behind closed doors, but you see and to make them know that you see. And make them see what you see. So they will go, next time I will try to calculate it. And so it worked as a deterrent. And we also, in the international norms, we have to kind of like make sure that we always, like Dr. Luca was saying, engage all parties to the conflict. We don't pick and choose. We don't say, we are not going to talk to the government of Sudan. Yes, according to the law, somebody like Bashir is indicted, I'm not going to talk to him. But that doesn't mean that I'm not going to talk to the government of Sudan. I will be engaged with other interlocutors that are going to send the messages up and down, and then I will take these messages up and down. And at the end of the day, we have to talk to the rebels, we have to talk to everybody, get them engaged, get them to use international norms and become responsible. I've never seen a rebel group that signed the Geneva Convention, for example. Yeah, this is only countries can do that. But we can take, like Dr. Luca was saying, an abbreviated version of that maybe, and make the rebels commit to not committing atrocities during, or the humanitarian ceasefire, where we can have secure corridors and we'll be able to reach the affected communities. I think, yes, your experience with Gareth Evans and the frustration that has happened to them, we are all frustrated. You go and talk to people. We come out of the White House so many times, meeting with officials, and you feel good about the issue because, of course, they are politicians. You talk to them, and then you sit there and you lay out a good plan of policy, for example, recommendations. And you find people receptive and everything. But how many groups like this come to the White House every day? And how many of them come with policy recommendations? And then at the end of the day, who got the ears of the president? I've been told and that, in the morning briefings, the president will hear from different people, and you can verify this. In the West Wing, he will be hearing to different briefers in the morning. The intelligence guys will make sure that they will be the last people who brief the president, because that is the last thing that is ringing in your ears. So if they told you that do not touch Afghanistan, you don't touch Afghanistan. So all the things that were said by any other department will go. But of course, government doesn't work like that. There are people who will remind him of so many things all the time. But the competing interests of so many things, and also we can only tend to so many things, and also the dilemma between what is national, because we can see Obama was agonized the night before, trying to spell out what is national versus what is international. And he even, like one of my colleagues in one of the classes this morning said, he went to a Q&A. Mr. So-and-so, or somebody called me from, and he asked me so, and this is the answer. He was like a student being given a task to show a homework. And that gives validity to where the spongy relationship between the leaders and followers, and the interchangeable places where we find ourselves at one point or the other. So the frustration in the international community is there, and it's always going to be there. And that will take me to the ICC, Juliet. My goodness. I do not prescribe to the thing that is adopted by the African Union and some of my African compatriots that are saying the ICC is there to target Africa and to... This is something that is put out there out of sentiments, and sometimes also it is picking certain facts, amplifying them, and leaving others. If you look at the cases that are before the ICC from Africa today, you find the majority of these cases were actually handed over to the ICC by the Africans themselves. The ICC did not come to the Kenyans and say, I want to grab this, and you are there.
Most of those referrals were actually for the opposition, for rebel movement.
It was referral coming in from the Africans. The opposition are Africans too. Why this dichotomy between the opposition and government, where we see the government has the legitimacy and the opposition doesn't?
But it's politics too.
Oh, it is politics. Thank you very much. It is politics, but at the end of the day, it plays this as if, you know, and we see some of the people in the Arab world are saying, oh, these guys are targeted. They applaud when the international community asked the International Criminal Court to intervene in the case of Al-Hariri, for example. The whole Muslim world cheered the ICC when they are grabbing Milosevic and Kradic, the butcher of Srebrenica. Yes, because they killed Muslim people. Then when you come at the time when Muslim people are killing Muslim people and say, oh, this is targeting the Muslims, or the Israelis are the... Guys, there is always somebody who is going to find something that is not interesting. Let us all agree. Take politics out of the International Criminal Court. That we can understand and we can sit there. However, it is not as easy as getting there and taking this, like this cup I'm taking from one side of the table to the other. It is not going to be easy. Politics is going to be there. However, if we are going to have a debate that is going to be credible and also sitting out there where we can all contribute to it without making faces on each other, we can say the Africans might be targeted more proportionately than other people. That can be accepted. But are they targeted just because they are Africans or because there is something that is really bad going on in Africa? And somebody will come and say whether this is a country that is in good books or the United States, or they are not in good books with the Netherlands. That is going to be there. We are not angels. This is the international. That is how this international house that we live in works. So we are going to bring in institutions like this. We are going to bring in the intellectuals of the world to debate this seriously without all these biases that are going to be with us for a long time. So I hope that, talking about the threshold, I hope that the United Nations will play more positive role. A lot of people are talking about the restructuring of the UN. I'm one of these people who pray that one day we will be able to restructure the UN. We cannot do away with it. I'm against that. We need it as an institution, but we need it to function better. We need to restructure it because it has been done, or the building of the United Nations was completed after the World War II and through the Cold War time. This is a new era. This is a new people. This is a new way to do business. This is a new place where we have a child 12 years old stand in a corner in Myanmar with a 3.5 megapixel camera in a backwarded phone that is bringing to the world the March of the Monks that day, where CNN was quoting YouTube rather than the other way around. The international citizen became the maker of news, the editor of news, the transmitter of news, the broadcaster of news. We are in a transparent world. We are where leaders are challenged by 5 years ago. Nobody can tell Obama what to do. He is coming in a serious address like the situation with Syria, and he is reading to us some letters from ordinary citizens that are there. It happened before in history, but it's not like this happening in real time. So with all these factors together, I think our institutions need to be revisited, reconstructed in such a way that it's going to accommodate this, bringing in younger people in different generations that are now actually in real time putting their contribution there. Before, as adults, we used to tell them, oh, children, you are supposed to be seen, not to be heard. Today, they are being heard more than they are being seen. So the international community changed because of the people of the world change. We have to change the norms. We have to change the values. We have to change the beliefs. We have to build on the good things that we have. We have to change our institutions, and we have to continue this debate to a day where we are going to put all this, like Muhammad Yunus said, poverty in the museum. We can put mass atrocities in the museum and tell people that a long time ago, when we were ignorant, this is what you used to do to ourselves. Thank you very much.